The rescue. The road stretched endlessly across the dry countryside, the sun lingering low as if reluctant to set. Clara Whitmore urged her horse forward, her daughter Elena riding eagerly ahead. Dust curled around the wheels of their small cart, carrying sacks of flour, salted meat, and the few necessities their meager farm could afford. Clara's gaze lingered on Elena, her long auburn hair catching the light, her laughter echoing with a youthful freedom Clara both admired and envied. For years, Clara had lived with the quiet ache of widowhood, her life narrowed to the boundaries of survival. Elena's brightness was her only comfort, yet it also reminded her of the life and intimacy she had lost with Samuel, her late husband. Clara had not spoken aloud of a loneliness, but it shadowed her every day. As the road curved near a cluster of oak trees, Elena suddenly drew her horse to a halt. "Mother, look!" she cried, pointing toward the clearing. Clara followed her daughter's gaze. At first, she thought it was an abandoned coat caught against the bark. But as her eyes adjusted, she saw the figure of a man bound tightly to a tree. His wrists were raw from rope burns, his clothes torn, his face bruised and dirt-streaked. The scene was so startling that Clara's breath caught. Elena dismounted quickly, her youthful impulsiveness overriding caution. "Someone's hurt. We must help him." "Wait," Clara warned, but her own heart was already propelling her forward. She slid from the cart, clutching a small knife she carried for protection. The man lifted his head at the sound of their approach. His eyes, a striking gray even through swelling, widened with both relief and shame. "Please," he rasped, his voice hoarse. "Untie me, before they come back." Clara knelt beside him, her knife working at the knots. His breath was ragged, his chest heaving with the effort of speaking. "Who did this to you?" she asked, keeping her tone calm though her pulse raced. "Outlaws," he muttered. "They wanted money. I had none on me, so they left me here to die." As the ropes fell away, the man crumpled forward, and Clara caught his weight instinctively. He was heavier than he looked, his frame solid beneath the torn fabric of his shirt. For an instant, his head rested against her shoulder, and something unfamiliar surged in her, an awakening warmth she immediately tried to dismiss. "Mother, he's badly hurt," Elena said, her face full of concern. "We can't leave him here." Clara helped the man to his feet, steadying him as he leaned against her. He met her eyes with a faint, weary smile. "You have saved me," he whispered. "The name's Richard Hale. I owe you more than words can say." The name tugged at Clara's memory. Richard Hale, owner of the Hale Ranch, a man whispered about in town for his wealth and influence. She had never seen him up close, yet here he was, stripped of power, humbled and vulnerable. "You need shelter," Clara said firmly. "We'll take you home." Richard shook his head faintly. "No, my ranch is near. If you'll guide me, I can repay you properly." Elena's eyes sparkled with wonder. "The Hale Ranch? Truly? Mother, imagine that." Clara shot her daughter a warning look, though inwardly she shared a flicker of awe. Still, she reminded herself this was no time for fantasies. Their task was simple: deliver him to safety. The journey back was slow. Richard leaned heavily on Clara, each step a struggle. Elena tried to lighten the silence with chatter, speaking of their small farm, of her dreams to see the world beyond their village. Richard listened kindly, though his eyes often wandered back to Clara, studying her with an intensity she tried to ignore. At last, the sprawling outline of the Hale Ranch rose against the twilight. Lanterns flickered at the gate, and stable hands rushed forward at the sight of their master's return. Clara eased Richard into their care, but as they led him inside, his hand caught hers. "I will not forget this," he said, his voice stronger now, though his grip trembled. "You and your daughter have given me back my life. I intend to repay it fully." Clara nodded, unsure how to respond. Gratitude radiated from him, but beneath it lingered something else, an unspoken connection that unsettled her. She turned away quickly, but the warmth of his hand seemed branded into her skin. As she and Elena prepared to leave, Richard's voice carried from the doorway. "Stay the night, please. You've done too much already to vanish into the dark. I insist." Elena's face lit with excitement. Clara hesitated, torn between caution and curiosity. Yet deep inside, she knew a choice had already been made the moment she freed him from those ropes. And so, with twilight folding into night, mother and daughter stepped through the gates of the Hale Ranch, unaware that they had also stepped into a story of passion, betrayal, and consequence that would change all their lives. The ranch and temptation. The Hale Ranch loomed like a small empire against the fading horizon. Broad fields stretched into darkness, dotted with the silhouettes of cattle and the glow of lanterns guiding the night hands at work. Clara had never stepped beyond the wooden gates before, and as she crossed them now, she felt the weight of stepping into another world, one both dazzling and dangerous. Inside, the main house radiated wealth. Polished wood floors reflected the soft light of oil lamps, and portraits of stained ancestors stared down from the walls. Elena's eyes widened with wonder as servants hurried forward, offering food, warm water, and rooms prepared in haste. For the first time in years, Clara felt overwhelmed by abundance rather than scarcity. Richard, though weakened, insisted on addressing them before the doctor arrived. He sat propped in a grand armchair by the fire, his wounds cleaned but his dignity intact. His gaze followed Clara with quiet intensity, as though he had carried her face in his mind since the moment she cut his ropes. "You risked yourselves for me," he said, his voice steadier. "I owe you more than shelter. You could have ridden past. Many would have." Clara folded her hands tightly, resisting the warmth creeping into her chest. Any decent person would have done the same. Richard smiled faintly. "Perhaps. Yet I have met many who are decent only until compassion costs them effort. You are different, Mrs. Whitmore." The formal address startled her. Few called her by her married name anymore, and hearing it spoken with respect unsettled her. Before she could reply, Elena leaned forward eagerly. "And you're Richard Hale, the rancher everyone speaks of," she said. "I always wondered what it looked like, hey?" Richard's attention flickered briefly to Elena, then returned to Clara. "Then you must stay and see it properly. Both of you. Tomorrow, if your mother allows." Elena clapped her hands softly, thrilled by the prospect. Clara offered only a cautious nod, though inwardly she felt a ripple of unease. The invitation was generous, perhaps too generous, and generosity from a man like Richard could never be without purpose. Dinner was laid in the long hall, a table spread with roasted game, vegetables, and wine. Clara had almost forgotten such plenty existed. Elena laughed easily, raising questions about the ranch, its workers, the scale of its herds. Richard answered with patience, yet his eyes lingered often on Clara, not the daughter who sought his attention. Clara kept her gaze lowered, aware of the invisible thread tightening between them. Each smile, each casual word seemed to pull them closer, though no one else at the table could see it. She told herself she was imagining it, yet her pulse betrayed her. Later, when Elena had gone to bed, Clara wandered into the garden to still her thoughts. Moonlight poured silver across the paths, the air thick with the scent of roses. She had always loved the night for its silence, but here the silence felt charged, alive with things unsaid. She did not hear Richard approach until he spoke softly behind her. "You look as though the world rests upon your shoulders." Clara turned, startled. He stood without his cane, the stiffness of pain hidden beneath resolve. His presence unsettled her more than the vastness of the ranch itself. "I should be resting," she replied quietly. "So should you." "I could not," he said, "not while knowing the woman who saved my life was walking alone in my garden." Clara's throat tightened. His words carried a weight that went beyond gratitude. "Mr. Hale." "Richard," he corrected gently. "You've already seen me at my weakest. Let formality go." The intimacy of his tone drew her nearer even as she longed to step back. She remembered Samuel, her late husband, his laughter, his touch, his absence. The memory clashed with the present moment, where Richard's eyes held a promise of something she had not felt in years, desire. She forced her gaze downward. "My daughter, she admires you. I cannot let her think." "I would never dishonor her," Richard interrupted, his voice firm. Then, softer, "but I cannot deny what stays within me when I look at you." The confession hung between them, dangerous and intoxicating. Clara's breath caught, her heart torn between propriety and the aching loneliness she carried. Before either could speak further, a servant's call echoed from the veranda, announcing the doctor's arrival. The moment broke like glass shattering, sharp and unfinished. Clara stepped back, her pulse racing, while Richard inclined his head in restrained farewell. "Good night, Clara," he said softly, the first time he had spoken her name. She turned quickly, walking back into the house before her trembling legs betrayed her. In her room, Elena slept peacefully, dreaming perhaps of riches and futures bright. Clara stood in the doorway, watching her daughter, her own chest heavy with guilt. She had not crossed the line, but she had stood at its edge, and that was enough to trouble her deeply. Outside, the moon drifted higher, indifferent to the turmoil of a woman who had saved a man only to discover the peril of saving herself. The Betrayal of Desire. Storm clouds gathered the next evening, rolling low across the sky as if nature itself conspired to unsettle the rock. The air grew heavy, the smell of rain thick on the wind. Inside the main house, Clara sat by the window of the guest wing, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Elena's laughter drifted faintly down the hall as she entertained herself with one of the maids. The sound should have comforted Clara, yet tonight it only deepened the ache in her chest. She could not stop thinking of Richard, his words in the garden, the warmth of his eyes, the way he had spoken her name as though it belonged only to him. She had resisted once, but the memory lingered like a spark refusing to die. A sudden knock startled her. Before she could answer, the door opened, and Richard stepped inside. He wore no jacket, only a simple shirt, his hair damp from the rising storm. He carried himself with the quiet determination of a man who had wrestled with doubt and chosen to act despite it. "I shouldn't be here," he said, his voice low, "but I cannot stay away." Clara rose sharply, her pulse hammering. "Richard, this is madness. Elena is just down the hall." His gaze softened. "And do you think I don't know the risk? Every step I've taken has been weighed against it. But you saved me, Clara, and now I can't save myself from you." The word cut through her defenses, exposing the loneliness she had buried for years. She thought of Samuel, her late husband. His memory had kept her faithful, but it had also kept her bound in solitude. Was it loyalty, or was it fear of living again? She shook her head, struggling. "This isn't right. Elena admires you. If she knew." Richard moved closer, his voice urgent yet tender. "She admires me because I'm a rancher, a man with land and cattle. But you, Clara, you see the man beneath it all. And I see the woman who has carried her family alone, who deserves more than sorrow and silence." His hand brushed hers. The touch sent fire racing through her veins, and she pulled back as though burned, but the damage was already done. The wall of restraint she had built began to crumble. Lightning flashed outside, illuminating the room in white brilliance. In that fleeting moment, Clara saw his longing laid bare, raw, unguarded, undeniable. Her breath caught, and before she could think further, Richard drew her gently into his arms. The first kiss was hesitant, a question unspoken. The second was an answer Clara could not withhold. Her resolve broke like the storm above them, replaced by a hunger she had denied for far too long. The world beyond that moment vanished. There was only his warmth, his strength, his whispered promises against her lips. Yet as swiftly as passion surged, guilt came crashing in. She tore herself away, pressing a trembling hand to her mouth. "What have we done?" Richard's chest rose and fell with uneven breaths. His eyes held both triumph and torment. "We've done what our hearts demanded." Clara shook her head, tears stinging her eyes. "No, our hearts are not the only ones at stake. Elena, my daughter, she trusts me, she trusts you. If she ever knew." Richard reached for her again, but this time she stepped back firmly, shaking with conflict. "This cannot happen again," she whispered. "Do you understand? Whatever this was, it ends here." He stood in silence for a long moment, rain pattering against the window. Finally, he nodded, though the fire in his gaze did not wane. "If that is what you wish, Clara." But know this, I cannot undo what has awakened in me. Nor can you. He left without another word, closing the door softly behind him. Clara sank onto the bed, her body still trembling from desire and dread. She felt as though she had betrayed not only her daughter, but also herself, the woman she believed she was. From the hallway came Elena's cheerful voice, calling for her mother to join her in watching the storm. Clara forced a smile when she entered the room, though her heart ached with the weight of secrets. Elena looked at her with such innocence, such unguarded joy, that guilt stabbed deeper than any outlaw's knife. Outside, thunder rumbled across the plains, a reminder that storms never last forever, but they always leave something broken in their wake. The Empire's price. Morning broke clear after the storm, the ranch washed clean by rain. The fields sparkled under the sun, yet within Clara, nothing felt renewed. She carried the weight of the night before as though it were bound to her shoulders with iron chains. Each glance at Elena over breakfast stabbed her with guilt. The girl laughed easily, speaking of horses she longed to ride and the wonders of ranch life. To her, this place was possibility. To Clara, it was temptation made flesh. Richard entered the dining room with a measured calm. His wounds were healing, though his presence carried a new gravity. He spoke little, but when his gaze met Clara's, the silence between them throbbed with memory. Elena, oblivious, chatted on, filling the air so that Clara's guilt could not breathe. Later, Richard summoned them both to his study. Maps and ledgers covered the great desk, the instruments of an empire. He stood beside them, not as a victim needing rescue, but as a master of land and fortune. "I owe you my life," he began, his voice firm, directed at them both. "If not for your courage, I would be carrion by now. I have wealth, land, and cattle, but all of it would mean nothing if I had not lived to see another sunrise. So I mean to give you both what I can never repay." Clara's chest tightened. "Mr. Hale, you owe us nothing. We only did what—" "I owe you everything," Richard interrupted, his tone unyielding. "Elena, I will grant you land of your own, a portion of the ranch large enough to secure your future. And Clara," his voice softened as he turned to her, "I ask that you stay and help me manage what remains. You have strength and wisdom I cannot ignore." Elena gasped, her eyes alight with wonder. "Mother, do you hear that? Land of our own. We could live without fear, without struggle." Clara forced a smile, but inside, dread coiled tighter. She understood the truth behind Richard's generosity. It was not merely gratitude, but the echo of what had passed between them. His gift was not innocent. It was bound to desire. "Richard," she said quietly, careful not to reveal too much, "this is too much. We cannot accept so freely." He stepped closer, lowering his voice so Elena could not catch the full weight of his words. "I cannot give you less, Clara. You saved me. You changed me. Do not ask me to pretend otherwise." Elena's excitement blinded her to the undercurrent, and she clung to her mother's arm. "Say yes, Mother. Please, think of what this means for us." Clara looked into her daughter's eager face, so pure, so hopeful, and her heart cracked. Accepting meant binding herself to Richard in ways Elena could never comprehend. Refusing meant turning away from security her daughter desperately deserved. At last, she nodded faintly. "We accept." Elena squealed with joy, embracing her mother, then darted to the window, dreaming aloud of how she would design their home. Clara's smile wavered, but Richard's eyes found hers, burning with silent triumph and longing. That night, celebration filled the ranch. Workers toasted their master's survival. Music echoed in the halls, and Elena danced with abandon. Clara moved among them like a ghost, her heart at war. She felt Richard's gaze follow her through every room, binding her to a promise neither had spoken aloud but both understood. As the revelry waned, Clara slipped outside for air. The night was quiet again, stars sharp against the velvet sky. Richard appeared moments later, as though drawn to her by an invisible thread. "You did the right thing," he murmured, standing close. "Your daughter will have a future, and you will never know want again." Clara's voice trembled. "At what cost, Richard?" She believes your gift is for her, but we both know why you offered it. His jaw tightened. Is it so wrong to give out of love? Clara turned sharply, pain lacing her words. Love, or guilt, or desire, call it what you will, but it has bound us in a secret that can never be spoken. One day Elena may see it, and when she does, she faltered, unable to finish. Richard touched her hand, his voice low. Then let her see a man who honors you, and a woman who dared to live again. She pulled away, unable to trust the fire his words ignited. Inside, laughter drifted from the hall where Elena still celebrated, unaware of the storm raging just beyond his sight. Clara gazed at the stars, her heart torn between gratitude and betrayal, love and guilt. The empire was theirs now, but empires always carried a price. And as the night deepened, Clara knew she had accepted not just land and wealth, but a future shadowed by secrets that could never remain buried forever.